Attention! What you are about to watch will completely change your view of humanity. I was there, filming quietly when I witnessed one of the most disturbing scenes of recent times. Two mothers who should be setting an example, humiliating an autistic child, pointing, laughing, making absurd comments about his repetitive movements. Can you imagine the look in that child's eyes? The silent pain of someone who cannot defend himself? The worst of all, the child, his mother, trying to hold back tears while hugging her son who didn't understand why he was being subjected to such cruelty. What happened next was something no one expected, an intervention that left everyone in absolute shock. Today, you'll discover how a simple attitude forever changed the life of that family and how it can transform yours too. Before continuing with this impactful story, I need you to go right now to the first pinned comment or the description of this video to get your copy of the ebook The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance. It's a special guide that can make all the difference to your health, teaching you to evolve spiritually and achieve your physical, mental, and financial goals. Get your copy right now, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is the perfect time. Click the subscribe button, activate the bell to receive all notifications, and not miss any of my revealing stories about financial and moral justice. Hello, everyone. This is Millionaire, bringing another real story that needs to be shared. For those who don't know me, I'm a businessman who decided to use my fortune for something greater than simply accumulating wealth. I dedicate my life to testing people's character, especially those in positions of power or influence, because I believe that someone's true value is revealed in moments when no important person is watching. Today, I'm going to tell you something that happened last week while I was visiting a small park in the city center. I was sitting on a bench, observing families, children playing, when I noticed something strange happening on the main playground. A child of approximately 8 years old was in a corner, making repetitive hand movements, rocking his body back and forth. Next to him, a woman who appeared to be his mother, trying to calm him and encourage him to play with the other children. I immediately recognized the characteristic signs of autism. The mother, with the look of someone who had been facing this situation daily, showed infinite patience. That's when I noticed 2 other women sitting on a nearby bench. They began to whisper, pointing at the boy and his mother. The looks of contempt were evident. I decided to move a little closer to understand what was happening. What I heard next left me completely outraged. "Look at that strange child," said the first woman, making no effort to lower her voice. "Why doesn't she control that boy? He's scaring the other children with that bizarre behavior." The friend agreed, adding, "These people shouldn't bring children like that to public places. My daughter is afraid of those strange movements." They laughed, not realizing that the boy's mother heard every cruel word. I saw that mother's face crumble as she tried to hide the tears from her son's eyes. The little one, oblivious to the malicious comments, continued in his own world. At that moment, I felt my blood boil. As Mr. Millionaire, I have witnessed many injustices in luxury stores, expensive restaurants, and other high society environments. But seeing 2 adult mothers ridiculing a vulnerable child and his dedicated mother was a new level of cruelty that I could not ignore. I decided to intervene, not aggressively, but educationally. After all, my mission is not only to test people's character but also to transform hearts and minds through knowledge and compassion. I got up calmly and walked to the bench where the mother was with her son. I introduced myself gently and asked if I could sit beside them. The woman, still shaken by the comments she had heard, timidly agreed. "Your son is special, isn't he?" I asked sincerely. She looked at me surprised, probably expecting another negative comment. "Yes," she replied almost in a whisper. "He has autism. Diagnosed at 3 years old. We're doing therapies, but it's still difficult for him to socialize. We tried to go out a bit today because he loves the swings in this park." I looked at the boy, who was now swinging gently on one of the swings, with a discreet smile on his lips. "What's his name?" I asked. "Miguel," she replied with a sparkle in her eyes. "He's amazing with numbers and colors. He can memorize patterns that even I can't perceive." As we talked, I noticed that the two women who were making malicious comments continued to observe and laugh. It was time to transform that situation. "Would you excuse me for a minute?" I asked Miguel's mother. "I promise I'll be back soon." I went to the bench where the two women were. I approached with a polite smile and asked if I could sit for a moment. They agreed, probably imagining that I also wanted to comment on the strange child in the park. "I see you're observing that boy over there," I began calmly. "Do you know what autism is?" The two looked at each other, a little uncomfortable with the direct question. "It's a mental illness or something like that, isn't it?" one of them replied with disdain. "Children who can't behave properly." I took a deep breath before continuing. It was the perfect moment for a lesson in empathy and knowledge. Actually, autism is a neurological condition that affects how a person perceives the world and interacts with it. It's not a mental illness, and certainly not a lack of education or limits, as you seem to suggest with your comments. The women became visibly uncomfortable, realizing that I had heard their cruel words. "Miguel, that boy over there has a different sensory perception than ours. Sounds that are normal for us can be extremely loud and painful for him. Lights that we barely notice can be blinding. The repetitive movements that you were ridiculing are his way of self-regulating, of calming himself in an environment that can be chaotic and frightening for his senses." One of the women tried to defend herself. "We were just commenting about an 8-year-old child who is just trying to enjoy a day in the park, like any other child has the right to. Commenting about a mother who fights daily to provide normal experiences for her son, facing judgmental looks like yours." The other woman lowered her gaze, showing the first sign of shame. "Did you know that people with autism often have extraordinary abilities? Some have photographic memory, others are geniuses in mathematics or music. While you were busy laughing and judging, you missed the opportunity to meet someone truly special." At this moment, I decided to reveal who I was. I took out my personalized business card with the Millionaire symbol from my pocket. "My name is Mr. Millionaire. I'm a businessman who dedicates his life to testing people's character and helping those who truly deserve it. Today, unfortunately, you failed the basic humanity test." The two women turned pale upon recognizing my name. My videos already had millions of views on social media. "But I'm not here to humiliate or expose you. I'm here to offer an opportunity for learning and redemption." I took 2 envelopes from my pocket. In these envelopes are 2 tickets to a workshop on neurodiversity that will take place next weekend. It's taught by autism specialists and parents of neurodiverse children. I invite you to attend, learn, and afterward, if you feel it in your heart, apologize to that mother and her son. The women took the envelopes in silence, clearly ashamed of their attitudes. Always remember, true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. Today, when you thought no important person was observing, you revealed a poverty of spirit that no money in the world can compensate for. I left the two reflecting and returned to the bench where Miguel and his mother were. The boy was now fascinated with a small car that spun between his fingers. "May I introduce myself formally?" I asked the mother. "I'm known as Mr. Millionaire. I work testing people's character and helping those who truly deserve it." The woman's eyes widened in recognition. "I've seen your videos. What are you doing here?" "Observing, as always, and I witnessed something that deeply disturbed me." I told her about my conversation with the two women, omitting the crueler details so as not to hurt her even more. "I want you to know that you're doing an incredible job with your son. The patience and love you show are the true definition of wealth." Tears began to roll down the woman's face. "Thank you," she said. "Sometimes it's so hard. People don't understand. They think it's a lack of discipline or that I'm a weak mother. But they don't see our daily battles, the small victories we celebrate." "What's your name?" I asked. "Renata," she replied, wiping away her tears. "Renata, I want to do something for you and Miguel. Not out of pity, but out of admiration for your work as a mother." I opened my briefcase and took out a third envelope, significantly larger than the others. Inside, this is a voucher for a full year of specialized therapies for Miguel at one of the best clinics in the country. There's also a contact for an association of parents of autistic children that offers emotional support and guidance for families like yours. Renata was speechless, looking at the envelope as if she couldn't believe it. "I can't accept something so grand," she finally managed to say. "You can and should accept it. It's not charity, Renata. It's an investment. Investment in a better future for Miguel and for all the people he will positively impact throughout his life. Because children like him, when they receive proper support, often teach us new ways of seeing the world." Miguel, who had been concentrating on his toy car, suddenly looked at me. Not directly in the eyes, but enough for me to realize that somehow he was present in that conversation. "Besides," I continued, "I want to invite you to participate in a project I'm starting. A sensory park adapted for neurodiverse children. A space where Miguel and other children can play without being judged, with equipment and activities specifically designed for their sensory needs. Your experience and knowledge would be invaluable for this project." Renata couldn't contain her tears now. This would change everything. For Miguel, for me, for so many families. "Then it's decided. My assistant will contact you this week to work out the details." At that moment, I noticed that the two women who had been mocking Miguel were approaching timidly. One of them was holding an ice cream in her hand. "Excuse me," said one of them, visibly nervous. "We would like to offer this ice cream to your son, if he can accept it. And we want to apologize for our comments. It was ignorant and cruel of us." Renata looked at me, then at the women, and finally at Miguel, who seemed interested in the ice cream. "Miguel loves chocolate ice cream," she said with a cautious smile, "but he prefers to eat with a specific spoon that we bring from home because of tactile sensitivity." "We can wait while you get the spoon," offered the other woman, "and we would really like to learn more about autism, about how we can be more understanding." I smiled discreetly. Perhaps my conversation with them had taken effect faster than I expected. During the following minutes, I observed a transformative scene. The two women, who previously mocked cruelly, were now listening attentively as Renata explained about the particularities of Miguel's autism, how he loved numbers, how he communicated in his own way, how he perceived the world in a unique way. Miguel, in turn, seemed more relaxed, savoring his ice cream with his special spoon, occasionally looking at the patterns formed by the shadows of the trees on the ground of the park. I decided it was time to say goodbye. My mission there was accomplished. As I got up, Renata held my hand. "How can I thank you for all this?" she asked sincerely. "Continue being the amazing mother that you are, and when Miguel grows up and uses his special gifts to make a difference in the world, as I'm sure he will, remember this day. Remember that true wealth is not in the money I could offer to help you, but in the character you demonstrate every day by fighting for your son." I also said goodbye to Miguel, respecting his space and not forcing physical contact. He offered me a quick look and a hand movement that Renata interpreted as his way of saying goodbye. Walking away from the park, I reflected on the transformative power of a simple intervention. Two women who started the day mocking a vulnerable child were now taking their first steps to become allies and advocates for neurodiversity. A mother who felt alone and judged now had resources and a support network. And Miguel would continue to be exactly who he is, perfect in his uniqueness. If you are watching this video and know someone in the same situation as Renata, remember that your support can make all the difference. And if you have ever judged someone without knowing their story, as those two women did, it's never too late to learn, evolve, and redeem yourself. Speaking of evolution, don't forget to get your copy of the ebook The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance. in the first pinned comment or in the description of this video. This transformative guide will help you achieve prosperity not only financial, but also spiritual and mental. Before continuing with this story, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take this moment to click the subscribe button and activate the bell. This way, you won't miss any of my missions of social and financial justice. 2 weeks after this encounter in the park, I received an email from Renata. Miguel had started therapies at the clinic and was already showing small advances. She attached a photo. Miguel concentrated on a complex puzzle, with a slight smile on his face. But what moved me the most was learning that the 2 women from the park actually attended the neurodiversity workshop. Not only that, they sought out Renata afterward to properly apologize and offer help with Miguel whenever necessary. One of them, a teacher by profession, even started an autism awareness project at the school where she worked. This made me reflect on how a single intervention can create waves of transformation that spread far beyond the initial moment. As a successful businessman, I've always believed in the power of money to change lives. But cases like this show me that, frequently, what people need most is not financial resources, but understanding, education, and empathy. The money I invested in Miguel's therapies was significant, yes, but the true value of that encounter in the park was the change in mindset that I witnessed. 2 women who abandoned prejudice and embraced understanding. A mother who discovered she wasn't alone in her journey, and a special boy who gained more allies in a world that is not always kind to those who are different. The following week, I visited the location where the sensory park I mentioned to Renata would be built. Walking through the empty terrain, I began to visualize what that space would become. A place where children like Miguel could be exactly who they are, without judgments or unrealistic expectations. The project would include equipment specifically designed for children with different sensory profiles, quiet areas for those who need less stimulation, diverse tactile experiences, carefully planned colors and lights, and, most importantly, a team trained to understand and support neurodiversity. While examining the project plans with the architects, I received another surprise. Renata had shared our story with a group of parents of autistic children, and several of them had offered to participate in the planning of the park, bringing their valuable experience. Even more surprising was receiving a call from one of the women I met that day in the park. She wanted to know if she could volunteer in the sensory park project. She told me that, after the workshop, she had researched more about the topic and realized how ignorant she was about autism and other neurological conditions. Now, she wanted to make a difference. This is the type of transformation I seek to provoke in my interventions as Mr. Millionaire. Not just helping financially, although that is important, but planting seeds of change that continue to grow long after I leave the scene. That same week, I organized a meeting with autism specialists, parents of neurodiverse children, and educators to discuss how we could expand the project beyond the sensory park. The idea emerged to create an integrated support center, offering everything from specialized therapies to guidance for families and training for teachers and employers. Renata was present at this meeting, and I was impressed with her eloquence when speaking about the needs of families like hers. That shy and hurt woman I met in the park now spoke with confidence and purpose. Miguel was also present, busy with his puzzles in an adjacent room, adapted for his needs. During the break of the meeting, I approached Renata again. "You've transformed," I commented. "You seem like a different person." She smiled. I discovered my voice when I realized I wasn't just fighting for Miguel, but for all children like him. And you know what's most incredible? Those 2 women from the park have become my biggest allies. One of them even helped me create a support group for parents in our community. This is the magic of the work I do as Mr. Millionaire, seeing people transforming their lives and, in turn, transforming other lives around them. A domino effect of kindness and awareness that started with a simple intervention in a park. Speaking of transformation and growth, I want to remind you that you can find in the first pinned comment or in the description of this video the link to obtain your copy of the ebook, The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance. This exclusive material will teach you how to transform your life in all dimensions: financial, physical, mental, and spiritual. And if this content is resonating with you, don't forget to leave your like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue creating relevant content and transforming lives wherever I go. 3 months passed since that day in the park. The Sensory Park project was advancing rapidly, with the inauguration scheduled for the next semester. But something even bigger was happening. The story of Miguel and Renata, which I shared on my social media, with their permission of course, had gone viral. Thousands of parents of neurodiverse children shared their own experiences, creating a wave of awareness about autism never seen before. Business people approached me wanting to invest in similar projects in other cities. Politicians became interested in creating more inclusive public policies. Schools requested guidance on how to become more welcoming environments for children like Miguel. But the biggest surprise came from those 2 women from the park. They had started a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating the public about neurodiversity, using their own transformation story as a starting point, from villains to heroines in just a few months. When I met them again during a visit to the construction site of the Sensory Park, I could hardly recognize them, not just by their external appearance, but by the light in their eyes, by the purpose in their words. I never imagined that one of the worst moments of my life, when you confronted me about my horrible behavior, would transform into the beginning of my true mission, confessed one of them. Those words you said, about true wealth being in who we are when no one is watching, completely changed my perspective. This made me reflect deeply on the purpose of my work as Mr. Millionaire. It's not always about distributing money, although that's also important. Often, it's about distributing awareness, planting seeds of transformation, creating opportunities for people to discover the best in themselves, even after having demonstrated the worst. That day, walking through what would be the future Sensory Park, I received a video from Renata. Miguel had learned a new skill in his therapy. The video showed him calmly approaching another child in the park, the same park where everything began, and offering to share his favorite toy. A simple gesture for many, but a monumental achievement for Miguel. The caption of the video said, "Without your therapies, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you for believing in my son's potential." That moment crystallized for me the essence of what I seek as Mr. Millionaire. It's not just about helping financially, but about seeing the potential in people and situations, even when that potential is hidden under layers of prejudice, ignorance, or pain. Miguel, in his uniqueness, was now inspiring an entire movement. Renata, with her maternal strength, was leading changes in her community, and even those 2 women, who began as antagonists in this story, found redemption and purpose through their subsequent actions. This is the true mission of Mr. Millionaire, not just testing people's character, but offering opportunities for growth and transformation, even, and perhaps especially, for those who initially fail the test. The inauguration of the Sensory Park happened 6 months after that fateful day. It was an exciting event, with hundreds of families present. Miguel cut the ribbon in his unique way, with Renata at his side, proud and emotional. The 2 women from the park were there too, helping to coordinate activities and explaining to visitors the special characteristics of that space. Their educational project had already reached thousands of people, changing perceptions and breaking down prejudices. Observing that whole scene, I felt a deep gratitude for having been in the right place at the right time to intervene in that situation. And I thought about how many other Renatas and Miguels are out there, facing daily judgments, needing only understanding and support. This is the true meaning of being rich. It's not about the money in the bank account, but about the ability to make a difference in people's lives. About using whatever resources we have, be they financial, intellectual, or emotional, to create a more just and understanding world. And you, who are watching this video, also have that power. You may not have the financial resources that I have as Millionaire, but you have something equally valuable: your attention, your understanding, your ability to choose kindness instead of judgment. The next time you encounter someone different, whether an autistic child, a person with a physical disability, or anyone who doesn't fit what society considers normal, remember this story. Choose understanding instead of judgment. Choose education instead of ignorance. Choose kindness instead of cruelty. Because, at the end of the day, true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. It's the character we demonstrate in the moments when we think our actions have no consequences that reveals who we really are. Don't forget that there is a way to transform your life in all dimensions. Access right now the first pinned comment or the description of this video to get your copy of the ebook, The Secret of the Rich: 7 Steps to Financial Abundance. This special guide will show you how to achieve a full and abundant life, as I teach in all my videos. If this story touched your heart, show your support by leaving your like, sharing with friends and family, and subscribing to the channel to not miss any of my missions of social and financial justice. 1 year after that day in the park, I received a special invitation from Renata. Miguel would make his first public presentation at an event about neurodiversity. He had developed an extraordinary ability with mathematics during his therapies and would demonstrate it to an audience. The event would take place at the city's cultural center, with the presence of specialists, families, and representatives of public authorities. It was an important opportunity to increase awareness about autism and celebrate the unique abilities of neurodiverse people. When I arrived at the event, I was impressed with Miguel's transformation. There were still the characteristic movements and sensory particularities, of course. Autism is not something to be cured or overcome, but understood and accommodated. But there was also a discreet confidence, a sparkle in his eyes that wasn't present in that first encounter. Renata welcomed me with a warm hug. "He's nervous, but determined," she told me. "We practiced a lot at home. The therapies have done wonders for his self-confidence." Miguel's presentation was extraordinary. Before a respectfully silent audience, he demonstrated his ability to calculate square roots of 4-digit numbers in seconds. Then he solved complex mathematical problems with impressive ease. There were no thunderous applause at the end. Renata had previously explained that loud sounds could be disturbing for Miguel. Instead, the audience did what she called silent applause. Hands waving in the air, a gesture used in the deaf community that was also adopted at events with autistic people sensitive to noise. Miguel made a small bow, his way of saying thank you, and left the stage, visibly relieved but also proud. Then it was Renata's turn to speak. She had become a powerful advocate for the cause of neurodiversity. With eloquence and emotion, she told the journey of Miguel, the challenges and the victories. And then, to my surprise, she told the story of that day in the park, how 2 women had deeply hurt her with their comments, and how a stranger, me, had intervened, changing the course not just of that day, but of her entire life. "That man taught me a lesson I will never forget," said Renata, looking directly at me in the audience. "That true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching, and that there is always the possibility of redemption and transformation, even for those who make mistakes." To my even greater surprise, she invited to the stage the 2 women from the park, Mariana and Carolina, as I learned their names. They came up, visibly emotional, and told their part of the story, how their prejudices and ignorance led them to hurt a mother and her son, how my intervention confronted them with the cruel reality of their actions, and how, from that point of shame and regret, they found a new purpose. "Today," said Mariana, "our organization has already trained more than 200 teachers and professionals on how to create inclusive environments for neurodiverse people, all because a stranger had the courage to confront us with our own pettiness that day." Carolina completed, "Our ignorance almost cost us our humanity. But thanks to Mr. Millionaire's intervention and Renata's generosity in giving us a second chance, we transformed our mistake into a mission. And now, each day is an opportunity to compensate for that terrible moment in the park, educating other people so they never make the same mistake. The audience was emotional, and I confess that I was too. Seeing how a simple intervention had branched out in so many positive directions was more rewarding than any financial profit I've ever obtained in my businesses. After the speeches, there was a cocktail reception for the participants. Miguel was in a quiet corner, exploring a logic game on a tablet, occasionally interacting with other neurodiverse children present at the event. Renata introduced me to various specialists and families who had benefited from the sensory park and the programs developed from that initial project. A mother hugged me crying, saying that for the first time her daughter had a place where she could play without being judged or misunderstood. Mariana and Carolina were busy distributing educational materials and talking with educators interested in their training program. They had really transformed their shame into purpose, their mistake into a mission. In a quiet moment of the event, Renata called me to a more private corner. She was holding an envelope in her hands. "After everything you've done for us, it may seem insignificant, but we wanted to give something back in some way," she said, handing me the envelope. Inside was a drawing made by Miguel, a portrait of me, in his unique way, with precise lines and surprising details that I hadn't even noticed in myself. In the corner of the drawing, with carefully formed letters, was written, "Thank you for seeing who I really am." That drawing was worth more than any financial investment I had made in that project. It was tangible proof that Miguel felt seen and valued for who he really was, not for how the world expected him to be. "He worked on this for weeks," explained Renata. "It's the first time he's drawn a person. Normally, it's just geometric patterns. His therapist said this demonstrates a significant advance in his social perception." I kept the drawing carefully, promising myself that it would be framed and would occupy a place of honor in my office, a daily reminder of the true meaning of wealth. Later that night, walking to my car, I received a message on my phone. It was a notification that a report about the event had been published online, highlighting Miguel's story and the impact of the sensory park on the community. The report mentioned how a mysterious philanthropist had started it all by witnessing an act of bullying against an autistic child. I hadn't been identified by name, and I was satisfied with that. My work as Mr. Millionaire was never about recognition or fame, but about impact. The article also highlighted how the project had inspired similar initiatives in 3 other cities, with plans for national expansion. What began as an intervention in a park was now becoming a movement. This made me reflect on the multiplying power of good actions, how a small gesture of kindness or courage can expand far beyond its origins, touching lives that we will never know personally. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson I've learned in my journey as Mr. Millionaire, that true wealth is not just in having resources, but in using those resources, be they financial, intellectual, or emotional, to create waves of positive transformation in the world. And this is a form of wealth accessible to all, regardless of bank balance. It's available in every moment when we choose understanding instead of prejudice, kindness instead of cruelty, courage instead of omission. The story of Miguel, Renata, Mariana, and Carolina is just one among many that I've witnessed over the years, but it remains as one of the most powerful examples of how small interventions can lead to great transformations. Speaking of transformation, don't forget to get your copy of the ebook The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance, that's available in the first pinned comment or in the description of this video. This guide will show you how to achieve not only material wealth, but also spiritual and emotional richness. If you like this story and want more content like this, leave your like, share with those who need to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue my mission of testing people's character and rewarding those who demonstrate true wealth of spirit. 2 years have passed since that first encounter in the park. The Sensory Park project had expanded to a national network of inclusive spaces, with Miguel as a kind of unofficial ambassador. His extraordinary mathematical abilities had caught the attention of researchers and educators. At 10 years old, he was already studying advanced mathematics with university professors who marveled at his ability to visualize abstract concepts. Renata had left her previous job to dedicate herself entirely to the cause of neurodiversity. With my initial financial support and later with sponsorships from large companies that were sensitized to the cause, she now managed an NGO focused on creating educational and professional opportunities for neurodiverse people. Mariana and Carolina continued with their awareness work, now on a national scale. They had developed a training program for public school teachers, helping them to properly identify and support children with different neurological profiles. On an autumn afternoon, I received an invitation to participate in the inauguration of the 10th Sensory Park in the network, in a country town. It would be a special event, with the presence of authorities and media. Renata requested my presence as a guest of honor. Normally, I preferred to maintain a low profile at public events related to my philanthropic projects. As Mr. Millionaire, my mission has always been to impact lives, not to seek recognition. But something told me that this event would be different. Upon arriving at the inauguration site, I was greeted by Renata with her usual warm hug. Miguel, now taller and more confident, greeted me in his unique way. A brief eye contact and a small nod. "We have a surprise for you," said Renata with a mysterious smile. The ceremony began with speeches from local authorities and representatives of parent associations. All highlighted how the project had transformed the lives of countless families, creating spaces where neurodiverse children could play, learn, and socialize without the usual obstacles. Then came the moment of the surprise mentioned by Renata. A large panel was unveiled in the center of the park, revealing the new official name of the network, Mr. Millionaire Sensory Parks, where everyone is seen. I was speechless. I had never allowed my name to be so directly associated with any of my philanthropic projects. Renata took the microphone. 2 years ago, an extraordinary man witnessed my son being ridiculed in an ordinary park. Instead of just going his way, he chose to intervene. Instead of just offering money, he offered understanding, education, and opportunity for transformation for everyone involved. She continued, "This man taught us that true wealth is in who we are when no one is watching. And paradoxically, that lesson was only possible because he was watching, seeing not just the cruelty being perpetrated, but also the potential for transformation in each person present in that scene." Miguel then approached the microphone timidly. It was rare for him to speak in public, so the silence was absolute when he began. Numbers don't lie. Before, 0 parks for people like me. Now, 10 parks, 5,121 children benefited, 1,889 parents receiving support, 942 teachers trained. He paused, took a deep breath, and concluded, "Thank you for seeing me." Just like that, direct and powerful in Miguel's unique way. It was then that I realized that silent tears were rolling down my face. In all my years as Mr. Millionaire, testing people's character and intervening in situations of injustice, I had never felt so clearly the multiplying impact of a single action. When I was invited to say a few words, I walked to the microphone still emotional. When I intervene in situations like the one I witnessed in that park 2 years ago, it's never with the expectation of recognition or gratitude. It's simply because I believe we can't go through life pretending not to see injustices when they happen before our eyes. I paused to look at the crowd of families present, children of all types exploring the new park, laughing and playing in an environment designed to include, not exclude. What happened from that day was beyond any expectation I could have had. Seeing how a simple intervention transformed into a national movement, how people who made mistakes found redemption and purpose, how an extraordinary boy and his courageous mother inspired so many, that is the true wealth that no money can buy. I looked directly at Miguel, who was observing me with his characteristic attention. Miguel taught me that seeing the world differently is not a disability. It's a gift, and he's right. The numbers don't lie. The impact of this project goes far beyond what we can measure, touching lives that we may never know personally. I concluded with the phrase that has become not just my motto, but the guiding principle of everything I do. True wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. But sometimes, all we need is for someone to really see us, exactly as we are. After the ceremony, there was a small reception for special guests. Miguel was showing me his latest fixation, a complex system of mathematical patterns that he had developed to explain the behavior of certain natural phenomena. While I watched, fascinated by his detailed explanations, I noticed a middle-aged man approaching timidly. He waited for Miguel to finish his explanation before addressing me. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Millionaire, right?" I confirmed with a nod. "My name is Roberto. I was one of those arrogant businessmen you exposed in one of your videos 3 years ago. You came into my luxury electronics store disguised as a homeless person, and I refused to let you in, treating you with contempt." I remembered the episode. Roberto had been particularly cruel, even calling security to expel me and making degrading comments about my appearance. After you revealed who you were and published the video, I lost customers. My reputation was ruined, and initially, I hated you for it, Roberto continued. But something happened in the following months. I was forced to reflect on my behavior, on my values, and I realized that you were right. Roberto then told me how, after closing his store due to bad publicity, he had completely reinvented his life. He opened a different business, an electronics store with accessible prices, where part of the profits was directed toward teaching technological skills to young people from disadvantaged communities. "Today, I have less money than before, but I am infinitely richer," he said with teary eyes. "Your intervention that day was the best thing that ever happened to me, although it took me a while to realize it." He extended his hand to greet me. "I came to this event because I knew you would be here. I wanted to thank you personally and say that I understood the lesson. True wealth is in who we are when no one is watching." I shook his hand, deeply touched by this unexpected conclusion to a story that I had considered closed years ago. "Roberto, your transformation is proof that we all have the capacity to grow and evolve, regardless of the mistakes we made in the past." He smiled. "My store now trains neurodiverse young people in technology. If you're interested, I'd love to show you how we're helping them develop professional skills." We exchanged contacts, promising to meet again to discuss possible collaborations between his project and the network of sensory parks. That unexpected encounter with Roberto reinforced something I've always believed, that the interventions I make as Mr. Millionaire are not just about exposing wrong behaviors or rewarding acts of kindness. They're about planting seeds of transformation that continue to grow long after I step away. Some of these seeds may take years to germinate, as in Roberto's case. Others bloom almost immediately, as we saw with Mariana and Carolina. But each one has the potential to create its own domino effect of positive changes in the world. Before leaving the event, I was approached by a team of journalists who wanted to do an exclusive interview about my work as Mr. Millionaire and my life philosophy. Normally, I would decline such requests, preferring that my actions speak for themselves. But something in the sincerity of that young reporter made me accept. "Many people see your videos and think it's just about rich people helping the poor or punishing bad people," she began. "But today, seeing the impact of this project, I realize that it's much deeper than that. Can you explain what the true mission of Mr. Millionaire is?" I reflected for a moment before answering. "My mission was never about money, although it is a powerful tool when used correctly. It's about provoking moments of truth, moments when people are confronted with who they really are and with the consequences of their actions." I continued. "When I test the character of a salesperson by treating them badly disguised as a rich customer, or when I dress as a homeless person to see how I'll be treated in luxury environments, I'm creating a mirror for people to see their true reflection, not the reflection they imagine or want to see." The reporter nodded, taking quick notes. And why focus so much on the issue of wealth and social status? Because money and status often function as amplifiers of character. They don't fundamentally change who we are, they just give us more freedom to be who we really are. And in a society as unequal as ours, they also create invisible barriers between people, allowing some to treat others as less human. As in the case of these mothers who ridiculed Miguel. Exactly. It wasn't a question of money directly, but of status. They felt superior because their children corresponded to what society considers normal, while Miguel didn't. That feeling of superiority is similar to what we see in rich people treating those with fewer resources badly. And what's the most important lesson you hope people learn from your work? I didn't hesitate. That true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. That the real test of our character is not in grand public declarations or moments of glory, but in the small choices we make when we think no important person is observing. The interview continued for a few more minutes, with questions about my future plans and other ongoing projects. At the end, the reporter thanked me and commented, "You know, before this interview, I thought you were just another eccentric rich person seeking likes on social media. Now I see that there's a profound philosophy behind your actions." I smiled. This is exactly the perspective transformation I hope to provoke in all who follow my work. Before saying my final goodbye, I looked for Renata and Miguel for one last moment together. I found them near a sensory equipment that emitted soft lights in mathematical patterns, a project that Miguel had helped develop. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of this incredible journey," I said to them. "You too have transformed a momentary intervention into a lasting legacy." Renata smiled with tears in her eyes. "I think that's how real change happens in the world, isn't it? A courageous person intervenes at a critical moment, and then other people are inspired to continue and expand that initial action." Miguel, in his unique way, offered his own comment. "It's an exponential equation. A small initial variable can result in massive growth depending on the subsequent parameters." I laughed, admiring his ability to translate emotional concepts into his preferred mathematical language. "You're absolutely right, Miguel, and you two have defined extraordinary parameters for this equation." As I left the park, I observed one last time that wonderful scene. Children of all types playing together, each in their own way. Parents talking, exchanging experiences without judgment. A space where difference was not just tolerated, but celebrated. And I thought about how it all began with a simple choice. The choice not to remain silent in the face of cruelty. The choice to intervene when it would have been easier to look the other way. We never really know the impact our actions will have in the world. A kind word, an act of courage, a hand extended at the right moment. Any of these small actions can initiate a chain reaction of transformation that surpasses our imagination. This is the message I hope to leave for all who follow my journey as Mr. Millionaire, that each of us has the power to initiate this chain reaction, regardless of our financial resources. Because true wealth, the one that really matters, is not in our bank accounts, but in our daily actions. It's in the moments when we choose compassion instead of indifference, courage instead of silence, inclusion instead of discrimination. If you were touched by this story and wish to transform your own life and the lives of those around you, don't forget to seek your copy of the ebook, The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance, in the first pinned comment or the description of this video. This special guide will show you how to develop not only material wealth, but also the true wealth that comes from living with purpose and integrity. And if this story resonated with you, manifest your support by leaving your like, sharing this video, and subscribing to the channel to receive more inspiring and transformative stories like this. Always remember, true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. But sometimes, all we need is for someone to really see us, exactly as we are. 6 months after the inauguration of that 10th Sensory Park, I received an unexpected call from Renata. Her voice was filled with emotion. "You won't believe what happened," she began. "Remember that interview you gave on the day of the inauguration?" I confirmed that yes, I did, wondering where that conversation was going. It was seen by a group of international investors specialized in social impact projects. They contacted us wanting to expand the model of sensory parks to other countries. The news was extraordinary. What began as an intervention in a small neighborhood park now had the potential to become a global movement. "We already have invitations to implement the model in Portugal, Argentina, and Canada to start," continued Renata, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. "And you won't believe who's leading the Canadian initiative. Roberto." "Roberto, the electronics store owner." "Exactly. Apparently he has contacts in Canada, and after our conversation, decided to expand his work with neurodiverse young people. He presented our project to investors there, and they loved the idea." I was momentarily speechless, amazed at how connections formed in completely unexpected ways. "But there's more," said Renata. "Miguel was invited to be a consultant in the design of the new parks. They want to incorporate his mathematical patterns into the sensory equipment. At 11 years old, he'll have his first official job." I heard Miguel's voice in the background commenting something about sensory patterning algorithms and Fibonacci sequences applied to recreational structures. "This is absolutely incredible," I replied, genuinely moved. "You two deserve every bit of this recognition and this opportunity." "None of this would be possible without you," said Renata, her voice choked with emotion. "That day in the park changed everything. Not just for us, but now potentially for families in various countries." I reflected on the transformative power of a single intervention. Like a small stone thrown into a lake creates waves that expand far beyond the initial point of impact. "We're organizing an international meeting with all those interested in the project," continued Renata. "We would very much like you to be present, not just as a guest, but as a mentor of the global project." I accepted the invitation without hesitation. Although I generally preferred to maintain a low profile in my philanthropic projects, this one was special. Seeing the transformation of Miguel, Renata, Mariana, Carolina, and now even Roberto, each finding their own path of positive impact in the world, was a powerful affirmation of the philosophy that guided my work as Mr. Millionaire. The international meeting happened a month later, bringing together representatives from various countries, social investors, neurodiversity specialists, and, of course, the people who had been at the center of the story from the beginning: Renata, Miguel, Mariana, and Carolina. During my opening speech, I shared the complete story, from that first day in the park to the present moment. What we've learned from this extraordinary journey is that real transformation happens in layers, I explained. First, there's the immediate intervention, that moment when we choose not to remain silent in the face of injustice. Then comes personal transformation, when those involved in the situation are confronted with the truth about themselves and choose to grow from that truth. We saw this with Mariana and Carolina, who transformed their regret into purpose. Next, there's community transformation, when those personal transformations begin to impact wider circles. The first sensory park, the training program for teachers, the nonprofit organization, all examples of how change expands. And finally, we arrive where we are today, on the threshold of systemic transformation, when the impact crosses borders and begins to change the way entire societies approach an issue. I looked at Miguel, seated in the front row with his noise-canceling headphones controlling the sensory stimulation of the environment. At his side, Renata watched him with evident pride. All this began because an extraordinary child was ridiculed for being who he is, and because courageous people, each in their own way, chose to transform that moment of cruelty into an opportunity for growth and change. I concluded with the phrase that had become not just my motto, but the central principle of the entire project. True wealth is in who you are when no one is watching, but when we choose to really see each other, with understanding, empathy, and acceptance, we create a type of wealth that benefits everyone. After 2 intense days of discussions, planning, and knowledge sharing, the Global Sensory Parks project was officially launched, with plans for implementation in 7 countries over the next 3 years. On the last night of the meeting, during a celebration dinner, Miguel surprised everyone by making a brief speech, something extremely rare for him. "Numbers are predictable," he began, his voice firm despite the obvious discomfort with so many people looking at him. "People are not. 2 plus 2 will always be 4, but 1 person plus 1 person can result in infinite possibilities." He paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "When those women laughed at me in the park, the equation seemed simple. Pain plus shame equals trauma. But then a new variable entered the equation." He looked directly at me, a rare moment of eye contact that didn't go unnoticed by those who knew his autistic profile. The final result was completely unexpected. The true mathematics of life is not about addition and subtraction. It's about transformation, how variables completely change depending on the context and interactions. The entire room was in absolute silence, absorbing the profound wisdom of that 11-year-old boy who saw the world through a unique lens. This global project is not just about parks. It's about changing the equation, changing how the world sees people like me, and how people like me see themselves. With these final words, Miguel returned to his seat, apparently exhausted by the social effort, but with a discreet smile of satisfaction. The ovation that followed was silent, hands waving in the air, respecting his auditory sensitivity, but perhaps for that very reason, even more powerful and moving. That night I reflected on how life constantly surprises us. As Mr. Millionaire, I had started my journey believing that my role was to test people's character and distribute financial resources to those who demonstrated deserving them. But along the way, I discovered that my true impact wasn't in the money I distributed, but in the moments of truth I created opportunities for people to see themselves clearly and choose a better path. And now I was witnessing how these moments of truth could grow and multiply, creating changes far beyond what I could have ever imagined. Before leaving for home the next day, I had a moment alone with Miguel and Renata. Miguel was focused on his tablet, designing patterns for the new parks while Renata and I talked. "You know what's most extraordinary in all this?" she said, observing her son with evident love. "It's not just the impact we'll have on other children like Miguel around the world. It's how this journey has transformed Miguel himself." She explained how, by being valued for his differences instead of ridiculed for them, Miguel had flourished in unexpected ways. His self-confidence had grown. His willingness to try new social experiences, although still limited, had increased significantly, and his understanding of his own value in the world had expanded enormously. "Before, I constantly worried about his future," confessed Renata. "How would he survive in a world that seemed determined to exclude him? Now, I see that he will not only survive, but thrive, and help create a better world in the process." Miguel, apparently absorbed in his tablet, surprised us by commenting, "I always heard everything, even when it seemed I didn't." Renata and I exchanged surprised looks. Miguel rarely participated spontaneously in conversations that weren't directly addressed to him. "And what did you hear, Miguel?" I asked gently. Without raising his eyes from his work, he replied, "I heard that being different doesn't mean being less, that my mind isn't broken, just connected in another way, and that—" He paused briefly. "The world can change to include me, instead of me having to change to fit into the world." They were simple words, but profound, the essence of everything we hoped to achieve with the project. "And it was what helped me find my voice," he concluded, still focused on his tablet. "Even if it's a different voice." In that moment, I felt that the circle was complete. The boy who had been ridiculed for his difference was now using that same difference to transform the world. And in the process, he had found a confidence and a voice that no one could have predicted. As I said goodbye to them at the airport, I promised to maintain regular contact and follow the development of the global project. Remember, I said to Renata, you and Miguel are not just beneficiaries of this project. You are its true architects. Your journey inspired all of this. She smiled through her tears. And it all began because you chose not to remain silent that day in the park, because you saw value where others saw only difference. True wealth is in who you are when no one is watching, I replied, hugging her, and you two have demonstrated a wealth of spirit that is truly inspiring. During the flight back home, I reflected on all the lessons I had learned from this extraordinary experience. As Mr. Millionaire, I had begun my journey believing that my mission was to test people's character and show that money often reveals who we really are. But this story, the story of Miguel, Renata, Mariana, and Carolina, taught me that my mission was much deeper. It wasn't just about exposing cruelty or rewarding kindness. It was about creating spaces for authentic transformation, about offering people the opportunity to see themselves clearly and choose a better path. And perhaps, above all, it was about recognizing that true social change doesn't happen just through grand gestures or generous donations. It begins with small acts of courage, the courage to intervene when it would be easier to look the other way, the courage to admit mistakes and work to correct them, the courage to be different in a world that celebrates conformity. The story of Miguel and all those involved would continue to evolve, as would the global project that was born from that initial encounter in the park. But some truths would remain constant, that everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not for what the world expects them to be, that our differences are not deficiencies, but potential sources of innovation and unique perspectives, and that, in the end, true wealth is not in our bank accounts or material possessions, but in how we choose to treat each other when we think no important person is watching. This would always be the central message of Mr. Millionaire, a message that would now echo not just in my videos and interventions, but in parks around the world where children of all types could play, learn, and grow together, celebrating their differences instead of fearing them. And for you who have followed this story to this point, I leave this same invitation. Look around you today. Who needs to be truly seen? Where can you intervene, even if in a small way, to create a moment of truth and potential transformation? Because each of us has the power to initiate a chain reaction of positive change. We don't need millions in the bank account or a social media platform to make a difference. We just need the courage to act according to our deepest values, especially in the moments when we think no one is watching. Don't forget to get your copy of the ebook, The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance, available in the first pinned comment or the description of this video. This transformative guide will help you develop not only material prosperity, but also the wealth of spirit that comes from living with purpose and integrity. And if this story touched your heart, please leave your like, share with those who need to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content. Together, we can create a world where everyone is seen, valued, and included, exactly as they are. 3 years have passed since that fateful day in the park. The Global Sensory Parks project had expanded to 12 countries, with more than 30 parks built or under construction. Miguel, now 14 years old, had become a kind of celebrity in the world of neurodiversity, a living symbol of how the talent and unique perspective of neurodiverse people can enrich our society when properly valued. His mathematical ability had evolved to a level that impressed even university professors, and he now collaborated with engineers and designers in the development of increasingly innovative sensory equipment for the parks. Renata had become an international speaker on inclusion and neurodiversity, sharing her personal journey and the lessons learned along the way. Her book, Seeing Miguel, A Journey of Love and Acceptance Beyond Autism, had become a bestseller and was translated into various languages. Mariana and Carolina now ran an international foundation dedicated to combating bullying and promoting the acceptance of diversity in schools. Their training program for educators had already reached more than 10,000 teachers in 6 different countries. And Roberto, the businessman who had made a complete journey of redemption, now led a network of technological training centers for neurodiverse young people, helping them develop professional skills and find meaningful jobs in technology companies. On a sunny spring afternoon, I received a special invitation, the celebration of the 3rd anniversary of the first sensory park, combined with the inauguration of the Neurodiversity Research Center that bore Miguel's name. It was an invitation I couldn't refuse. Although I had maintained constant contact with everyone involved throughout these years, there was something special about gathering in person to celebrate how far we had come. Upon arriving at the park, I was immediately transported back to that first day. The same trees, now taller and lusher, the same paths, now worn by the constant use of thousands of children. But the atmosphere was completely different. A space of celebration, inclusion, and infinite possibilities. Miguel was the first to see me. He had grown significantly, now almost my height. His way of greeting was still unique. A brief eye contact followed by a comment about some pattern he had noticed. Visitors increased by 27% in the last quarter, especially on Tuesdays. It's intriguing. I smiled, appreciating his direct form of communication. It's good to see you too, Miguel. You're taller. 10.2 centimeters since the last time we met, within the expected average for my age. Renata approached with her usual warm hug. He's been excited about your visit for days, she confided. In his way, of course. The celebration was a beautiful mixture of formality and spontaneous joy. Speeches by authorities and international partners alternated with presentations by neurodiverse children showing their unique talents. A choir of young autistic people presented an original composition, while artists with different conditions exhibited their works. At the center of it all was Miguel, no longer the ridiculed child from that first encounter, but a confident young man who had found his place in the world and now helped create space for others like him to do the same. During my speech, I shared again the story of how it all began, but this time with a perspective expanded by the years of development and growth we had witnessed. When I intervene in situations like the one I witnessed in this park years ago, it's never with a clear plan of where it will lead, I confessed to the audience. It's simply an acknowledgement that we cannot remain silent in the face of injustice, even, and perhaps especially, when it happens to those who have no voice to defend themselves. I looked at Miguel, seated in the front row with his noise-canceling headphones, apparently absorbed in a small electronic device, but I knew he was listening to every word. What happened from that simple moment was something none of us could have predicted, a chain reaction of transformation that began with 2 women facing their own ignorance and prejudice, passed through a mother finding her voice and purpose, and culminated in a global movement that has already impacted tens of thousands of lives. I paused, observing the diversity of the audience, families of all colors and configurations, children of all types of neurodiversity, authorities, investors, and simple supporters of the cause. But perhaps the most extraordinary transformation of all was the one we witnessed in Miguel, not a transformation that made him more normal or more adequate to traditional social standards, but a transformation that allowed him to flourish exactly as he is, brilliant, unique, and authentically Miguel. At this moment, to everyone's surprise, Miguel stood up and walked to the stage. He rarely participated in such public moments, and never without prior planning. "May I say something?" he asked without looking directly at me or at the audience. I handed him the microphone, curious about what he would share. "Statistically speaking," began Miguel with his clear and direct voice, "the probability of all variables aligning exactly as they happened that day in the park is infinitesimally small. That I would be in that specific park, that those women would be there too, that Mr. Millionaire would pass by at that exact moment. He paused, adjusting his noise-canceling headphones. Most people would call this coincidence or luck. I prefer to call it an emergent pattern in the apparent chaos of the universe. The audience was in absolute silence, absorbing his words. What I've learned in these years is that the human mind constantly seeks patterns. My autistic mind is particularly good at this. I see patterns where others don't. But the most important pattern I've identified has nothing to do with numbers or sequences. He finally looked briefly in my direction. It has to do with how a single action can completely alter the trajectory of countless lives, how a courageous intervention can initiate a new pattern that propagates exponentially. He made another pause, clearly reaching the limit of his social comfort, but determined to conclude his thought. "True wealth is in who you are when no one is watching." He quoted my own words. But perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is that there is always someone watching, even when we think there isn't. And sometimes it's exactly when we think no important person is looking that we have the opportunity to define who we really are. With these final words, Miguel returned the microphone to me and quickly returned to his seat, visibly relieved to have concluded his social participation. The ovation that followed was deafening. This time not silent, as Miguel had prepared with his special noise-canceling headphones for this moment. Renata, with tears in her eyes, hugged her son when he returned to his seat. Mariana and Carolina, seated nearby, applauded enthusiastically. Roberto, at the back of the room, waved in approval, and I, on the stage, felt an emotion that transcended words. That boy who had been ridiculed for being different was now teaching all of us one of the deepest lessons about humanity and transformation. I concluded my speech with few words, because Miguel had said everything that mattered. May we all be courageous enough to intervene when we see injustice, wise enough to recognize the value in differences, and humble enough to let our actions speak louder than our words. After the ceremony, during the celebration cocktail, I was approached by dozens of families wanting to share how the project had impacted their lives. Emotional parents telling how their neurodiverse children had found, for the first time, a place where they could simply be themselves. Children proudly showing their special abilities, without fear of judgment or rejection. But perhaps the most significant encounter was with a young woman who approached timidly, holding the hand of a little boy of approximately 6 years old. "You probably don't remember me," she said, "but I was in that park 3 years ago. I was one of the mothers who was mocking Miguel." It took me a moment to recognize her. Mariana had changed significantly, not just in appearance but in her energy and presence. "This is my son, Lucas," she continued, introducing the boy at her side. "He was diagnosed with autism last year." I was momentarily speechless, absorbing the irony and depth of that revelation. "Life has a strange way of teaching us lessons, doesn't it?" she continued with a melancholic smile. When I realized that Lucas was autistic, I immediately remembered that day in the park and felt such deep shame that I thought I couldn't bear it. She explained how, after the diagnosis, she had sought out Renata directly, confessing about her son and asking for guidance. To her surprise, Renata welcomed her without judgments, sharing resources and support. "She had every right to reject me, after the way I treated her," confessed Mariana, "but instead she showed me the same kind of compassion that you demonstrated that day, and that changed everything, for me and for Lucas." Little Lucas, just like Miguel years ago, was absorbed in his own world, fascinated with a small spinning object in his hands. "I wanted you to know that your impact goes far beyond what you can imagine," concluded Mariana, "not just through the parks or programs, but through the way that moment of truth changed hearts and minds, including mine." That conversation perfectly encapsulated what I have always believed as Mr. Millionaire, that true transformation doesn't happen through grand gestures or impressive donations, but through moments of truth in which we choose to act according to our deepest values. Before ending the night, I had a final moment with Miguel, Renata, and all the main people involved in the project. Gathered in an intimate circle, away from the cameras and the crowd, we shared our reflections on the extraordinary journey we had lived together. I never imagined that day in the park would bring us here. I confessed. But perhaps that's the beauty of acting with integrity. We never really know how far that stone will skip across the water. Miguel, in his unique way, offered a mathematical perspective. It's like a butterfly effect. Small variations in the initial conditions can lead to vastly different consequences over time. Renata smiled. In less mathematical terms, it's the power of one person seeing value where others see only difference, of offering dignity where others offer ridicule. Roberto, the redeemed businessman, added, and of offering a second chance when it would be easier to simply condemn and move on. Carolina completed the thought. It's about creating spaces where everyone can be exactly who they are, without needing to hide or apologize for their differences. Mariana, now with her son Lucas at her side, concluded, it's about transforming our biggest mistakes into our deepest purposes. Looking at that circle of people, each transformed in their own way by the shared experience. I felt a deep gratitude for the work I do as Mr. Millionaire, not for the financial resources I can distribute, although they are important, but for the opportunity to create moments of truth that can trigger such profound and lasting transformations. And for you who have followed this story to this point, I leave this final invitation. Look around you today. Where can you intervene to create a moment of truth? Who needs to be seen and valued exactly as they are? What seemingly small action can you take that could initiate a chain reaction of positive transformation? Because in the end, true wealth is not in our material possessions or social status. It's in the choices we make daily to create a more just, compassionate, and inclusive world. Always remember, true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching. But when we choose to really see each other, with compassion, understanding, and acceptance, we create a type of abundance that benefits everyone. Before we end this video, don't forget to get your copy of the ebook, The Secret of the Rich, 7 Steps to Financial Abundance, in the first pinned comment or the description of this video. This transformative guide will show you how to develop not only material prosperity, but also the true wealth that comes from living with purpose and integrity. And if this story touched your heart, please leave your like, share with those who need to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content. Your support allows me to continue creating transformative stories that show the true meaning of wealth in our world. Until the next character test, this is Mr. Millionaire, reminding you that true wealth is in who you are when no one is watching.